Okay, so this is the second video on the neurons and the neuroglial cells, and in this video we are going to be talking about the neuroglial cells, or we call them the glia cells. If you remember the first video, I said that the neuroglial cells, they are supporting cells. They support the neurons, they support the nervous system. They do not perform the functions of conducting impulses. They don't carry information. They don't send information. They don't receive information. What they only do is that they support the cells, the neuron cells that are found in the nervous system. Now, neuroglial cells are supporting cells of the nervous system that protect, nourish, and support neurons. Now, unlike neurons, they do not conduct nerve impulses, but they have the ability to multiply, to divide and multiply. Neurons, they cannot divide and multiply. A matter of fact, when neuron cells are injured, it's very difficult for these cells to heal, for them to heal and become normal back. Most of the time, when neurons are lesioned, when they are destroyed, maybe as a result of one thing or the other, it's very difficult for neuron cells to regenerate back. And that's what takes us to what we call the Wallerian degeneration. Is a condition where neuron cells, when they split, when the neuron cells is cut, instead of these cells to come back together and join together, no, both sides will start to degenerate because they do not have the ability to divide and multiply. But neuroglial cells, on the other hand, they can divide and they can multiply, but they do not conduct nerve impulses. They are only supporting cells of the nervous system. They protect, they nourish, and they support the neurons. Now let's move on to the types of neuroglial cells that are found in central nervous system. The type of neuroglial cells that are found in central nervous system is different from the type of neuroglial cells that you find in the peripheral nervous system. But let's start with the type of neuroglial cells that are found in the central nervous system. The first one is the astrocyte. Astrocyte. The astrocyte cells, they are star-shaped cells. They provide structural support and they are majorly involved in the formation of the blood-brain barrier. I don't know if you have heard about it before. The blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a barrier that is found in the brain. And what it does is that it limits the passage of materials, molecules, substances, compounds from the blood into the brain, because we don't want everything found in the blood to be able to get into the brain. So this blood-brain barrier is like a semi-permeable membrane that allows only for selective passage of selected compounds. Not everything found in the cell, in the blood, that is able to move into the brain, because the brain is a very delicate organ. It's one that controls every other part of the human body. So we want to be very selective in what can get to the brain. So these astrocyte cells, they help to form the blood-brain barrier, and they also regulate the chemical environment that are found around the neurons. They are star-shaped. They provide structural support, they help in the formation of the blood-brain barrier, and also they regulate chemical environment around the neurons. These are the astrocytes. The oligodendrocyte. The oligodendrocyte produce myelin sheath in the central nervous system. One oligodendrocyte can myelinate multiple axons. Now, these oligodendrocytes, they are cells that are found, neuroglial cells found in the central nervous system. And what they do, what their main function is to produce myelin sheath found in the central nervous system. They produce myelin sheath, and I know I said the myelin sheath, they are glycolipids, coatings, wrappings that are found on the axons. And one oligodendrocyte can myelinate multiple axons. It has the capability to myelinate multiple axons. One oligodendrocyte cell. The next one we have is the microglia. The microglia cells, they are more like the white blood cells that are found in the central nervous system, in the nervous system. They perform the function of white blood cells. And what is the function of white blood cells? Protection. Yes. So the microglia cells, they are the cells that fight They help to phagocyte debris, um, chemical substances, pathogens that are found around the central nervous system. There are small cells that act as phagocytes. Don't even know of phagocytes. Those cells that are able to engulf, swallow up substances that are found in the human body. So these microglial cells, they serve as phagocytes. They help to engulf, dissolve, and fight against those things that can cause havoc to the central nervous system. They protect the central nervous system from infection and debris. I already mentioned that they protect the central nervous system from infection and debris. These are the microglial cells. They are small cells that act as phagocytes and they protect the central nervous system from infection and debris. Then the last one we have is the ependymal cells. The ependymal cells. The ependymal cells are the cells that line the ventricles of the brain and the central canal of the spinal cord. No worry, when we get to the production of central nervous of the cerebral spinal fluid, the cerebrospinal fluid. Sorry for that. The cerebrospinal fluid. When we get there, we're going to talk more about the ependymal cells. These ependymal cells are the ones that line the ventricles. The ventricles are found in the midbrain, and they are involved in the production of central of cerebrospinal fluid. Why am I saying central? Of cerebrospinal fluid, sorry. So these cells, they line the ventricles of the brain, and also they are found in the central canal of the spinal cord, and they are involved in production of cerebrospinal fluid, and also they help in the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. We'll talk more about it when we get to the sorry about that. We'll get We'll talk more about it when we get to cerebrospinal fluid, formation and circulation, absorption of cerebrospinal fluid. So just know that the ependymal cells, they line the ventricles of the brain and the central canal of the spinal cord, and they help in the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. Now, neuroglial cells that are found in the peripheral nervous system. We mentioned 4 that are found in the central nervous system. Can you mention it? The astrocyte, the oligodendrocyte, yes, the microglial cells, and the ependymal cells. Good. Now, the neuroglial in the peripheral nervous system. Now, what are the neuroglial cells that are found in the peripheral nervous system? There are 2. We have the Schwann cells and the satellite cells. The Schwann cells and the satellite cells. Now, the Schwann cells are the cells that produce myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. They are the cells, the neuroglial cells that produce myelin sheath. If you remember, what is the cell that produces myelin sheath in central nervous system? Good. The oligodendrocyte cells. Now, the Schwann cells are the ones that produce myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. They produce myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. Now, we also have the satellite cells. Satellite cells are cells that surround neuronal cell bodies in ganglia. They provide support and regulation of their micro environment. These satellite cells, just like the satellite. What the meaning of satellite? Satellite, if you want to use it, you want to explain it based on geography. Satellite are those, let's say, not structures that surround planets. So the same thing with satellite cells and neuroglial cells for the PNS. They surround neuronal cell bodies in ganglia, and they provide support and regulation of the microenvironment that is found in the peripheral nervous system. So those are the 2 micro neuroglial cells that are found in the peripheral nervous system: the satellite cell and the Schwann cell. The Schwann cell produces myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. Good. Now let's talk about the difference. What are the differences between the neurons and the neuroglia? Yes, we have to be able to give the differences between neurons and neuroglia. So this table here is showing the differences between the neurons and the neuroglia. Now, based on function, the neurons conduct nerve impulses, while the neuroglial cell they support and protect the neurons. Excitability: the neurons are electrically excitable because they conduct impulses. Yes, any structure that's going to conduct impulse, that's going to carry information, carry impulses, is going to be electrically excitable. But for neuroglial cells, they are not excitable because they are not involved in the conduction of nerve impulses. Now, ability to divide. Neurons usually do not divide. Now, I said the neurons, they do not divide. But neuroglial cells, they have the ability to divide. They can divide multiple times. They can divide. Now, structure. Based on structure, the neurons, axons, and dendrites are present. In neurons, axons and dendrites are present. But for neuroglial cells, there is no axons or dendrites. No axons or dendrites. Now, for neurons, for the number, there are fewer. The neurons are fewer. Let's say out of 100% of cells that make up the nervous system, the neurons are like maybe 10%, while the remaining 90% are neuroglial cells. So you can see how the neural cells are few, while the neuroglial cells they are much more numerous. They are much because they are the one providing the support to the neurons. So they are much more than the neurons. The neurons are fewer, while the neuroglial cells are much more numerous. So these are the differences between the neurons and the neuroglial cells. So we will be able to cover what are the neurons, the classification of neurons, functional and structural. Then also the neuroglial cells that are found in central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Also the differences between the neurons and the neuroglial cells.